version, but
The example project.
we're still comfortable with the old design as well, so.
Data collection.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
I understand what you're
it's
saying.
not just a technicality.
Yeah, that's, I just started it all, I'll turn it over to you. For those, and it can move up further.
So is this the first time you're doing
The
this?
way.
'Cause I saw a site plan for one of these.
The Eversource ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time.
Okay.
So we have to wait for Cassidy to come down.
Very probably. Oh, really? Yeah, when Cassidy gets back. Yeah.
Oh, Andrea's here.
I don't wanna play with her computer, she'll let her in when she gets here.
No, I'm just saying that we're now 5, right?
Yeah. And Vicky's there,
Oh, good, okay.
her battery's running out, she says. She told me to tell Cassidy to let her in as John Ficarelli if her battery runs down.
Yeah.
Telling Barney earlier, we talked to Angel, the project manager, the 3 of us did this morning. And he doesn't, the Newtonville station. And
Oh,
they're waiting, of course, to see if the grant comes through. They don't know where the money's gonna come from if the grant doesn't come through.
Given the second round of climate right now, I think they're gonna have a hard time getting the money.
Yeah.
Hey guys, would you mind
I'm not,
promoting
I'm not holding.
Harry Crowley? I think that's actually Ned signing in.
No.
Can you hear us, Isaac?
we don't have a clerk, so we're sort of suspended here.
Isaac, can you
Oh.
hear us? No, she probably has it on.
Yeah,
No,
Isaac, you
she's
just have
right
to
here
hold
now.
for a second.
Sorry. That's okay, can you get it fixed?
Oh, no.
They're gonna.
Yeah, she said it was great.
Well,
Battery was running out.
first of all,
Said she made.
Well, I think you're both right there, so.
So, did you see that?
I was wondering where you were, Lon.
I was in California,
Terry Crowley wants to be promoted. Oh, that's actually not.
but
Oh.
the Sally's been standing for me
I was
any day.
wondering why Terry.
Did a great job.
Right, really great.
Okay, we'll just wait for everybody to get promoted and then we'll start.
Oh, that's stressful.
So David Kalis is there and
So, add this to the list. I think Friday's here.
why doesn't he move over? to the-
Pam's also here.
No, I think Pam Wright is in, that's a different thing.
Oh.
Okay, so should I just
I'll
start?
keep going, I'll keep trying.
All right, are we recording yet?
Recording in progress.
We're unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. All right, we had a few hiccups in the chamber technology, so we're starting a tiny bit late. But we are now ready to start, and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Facilities Committee. And here at the beginning of the meeting is Councilor Rado from Ward 7, Councilor Getz from Ward 5, Councilor Leary from Ward 1, and myself, Susan Albright, from Ward 2. And we have, and as a guest, we have Councilor Baker from Ward 7. And online, we have Councilor Kelly from Ward 3, and Councilor Danberg from Ward 6. And I know David Kalis, Councilor Kalis is there somewhere, but
Yes, right there.
he from
Pam Wright.
Pam Wright, and yeah, I'm getting to you. And others who are not on the committee but welcome are Councilor Wright and Councilor Malachy. Councilor Wright from Ward 3 and Councilor Malachy from Ward 3. And I think that's it for councilors. And we have also Jonathan Yo, Chief Operating Officer, John Daglian from Engineering, and Ned Cod from DPW, and Isaac Prezant from DPW. We have a whole bunch of people from planning, but we'll get to you later. Okay, so we have a bunch of public hearings that starts, who do we have to promote somebody for these public hearings?
Joanne Calendar is on.
Oh, she's in?
Yep.
Okay, should we do these separately or together? I
I
guess,
think you have to do them separately,
separately.
but I think we could do them quickly.
okay, so the first one is 210-24, Eversource Energy petitioning for grant of location to install and maintain approximately 1174 feet of conduit in easterly direction from manhole MH31725 at the intersection of Needham and Charlemont Streets, and to install and maintain 2 new manholes. So Joanne, you're on.
Yes, good evening. So the petitions tonight are all for the Northland Development Project. And this first grant location is, just as you stated, is to install approximately 1,174 feet of conduit into Charlemont Street and 2 new manholes.
So are you undergrounding the wires here? Is that what's going on?
Yes,
Okay, so they're carrying through with their plan to underground the wires, which is good. So let's open the public hearing. Is there anybody that wants to speak on this one? Seeing none, we can close the public hearing. Are there any questions from the committee? So we can just, anybody have a motion on this one?
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Abstentions? Okay, that takes care of the first one. Next one is 211-24. This is Eversource Energy petitioning for grant of location to install and maintain another 1170 feet of conduit easterly direction from these manholes that are listed here on 50 Tower Road. So Joanne, you're on.
yes, and again, as stated, this is for the Northland Development Project, and we are seeking a grant of location to install 1,170 feet approximately of conduit into Tower Road along with 3 new manholes.
Okay, is there anybody opening the public hearing on this one? Anybody that here to speak on this? Seeing no one, we can close the public hearing. And do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no.
Stop.
Any abstentions? Okay, that takes care of that one. And 213-24, Eversource Energy, it's a hard one when you keep saying it, petitioning for a grant of location to install and maintain 2,644 feet of conduit in a southeasterly direction, and this was at 156 Oak Street. Joanne?
Yes, we're seeking a grant of location to install approximately 2,644 feet of conduit into Oak Street along with 3 new manholes. And again, this is to underground the utilities in that area.
Okay. We have to open the public hearing on this one. Is there any, so the public hearing is now open. Anybody here to speak on this one? No, we're closing the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Abstentions? All right. And one more. 212-24, Eversource Energy petitioning for a grant of location to install and maintain 1164 feet of conduit, and this one is at 90 Christina Street. Joanne?
Yes, grant of location to install approximately 1,164 feet of conduit into Christina Street along with 2 manholes.
Okay, we can open the public hearing on this one. Are the Throngs here to speak on this one? Nobody's here, we can close the public hearing. A motion.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Do you know when you're gonna do the work?
I don't, but now that we have the approval, it will go to the construction department and they'll plan it accordingly.
Okay, great. Thanks very
Thank
much for
you.
coming.
You move fast.
Well, there weren't a lot of people here to speak. Okay, now we're at 220-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting approval of the installation of 2 raised intersections in accordance with City Ordinance 2651 at the intersections of Waverly Avenue and Franklin Street and Brookline Street at Hartman Road. And I just saw the Commissioner of DPW appear, Mr. Commissioner McGonigal.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councilors. We are requesting authorization to install 2 raised intersections, as you said, at Waverly Avenue at Franklin Street and Brookline Street at Hartman Road. City ordinance does require approval to install this type of traffic calming measure on the city roadways. The intersections will be reconstructed as raised table intersections. It's a traffic calming measure that's proven to be highly effective at slowing down speeding traffic, reducing traffic crashes, and improving pedestrian safety. All 4 streets at each intersection entering would have a gradual 10-foot long transition ramp, which elevates the vehicles approximately 6 inches to travel through the intersection at the same level as the sidewalks. The sidewalks will be protected by bollards in this area for additional pedestrian safety. These raised intersections are similar in design to the one that we installed at Beethoven Avenue and Puritan Street. We've developed this design in collaboration with Newton Fire. I believe there's a letter of support from Assistant Chief Bianchi in your backup also. These will be funded with ARPA funds, and both of these were in the top 5 of our 2021 traffic calming evaluation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Ned Cott, our Director of Transportation Operations, is here, along with Isaac Prezant, our traffic engineer, which most of you know both of them, I think.
Councilor Rado.
Thank you, Commissioner. A few things. One, you've all received multiple emails, I think, over the last 24, 48 hours. There is strong support in the community for this traffic calming measure on Franklin and Waverly. I personally drive through there virtually every day. I think it's essential that we get this done. Thank you, Commissioner, for doing this work and getting it done quickly. I do have a few questions, and I want to be clear at the outset that they're not meant to derail the project, because I think it needs to move forward quickly, but simply to make sure that we all understand what is being done here, so we do our due diligence. I'll add that while I'm joined by Councilor Baker this evening, for those watching, the councilors of the ward, we all talk to one another on a regular basis when we have projects like this. Councilor Baker and I and Councilor Grossman have all communicated on this. I know Councilor Grossman could not be here tonight, but she's indicated to me that she's very supportive of this. And again, I'm the representative from the ward on the committee, which is why I'm here. So, Commissioner, just to start, I take it you had to do some special things here to make this appropriate for fire trucks. Is that accurate? And could you just give us a brief description of that?
Sure, yes, Councilor. So what we have done previously, as we did the same process with the raised table at Beethoven, is we actually constructed this in our yard out of temporary asphalt, and did some tests with fire and their apparatus. That's how we came to this design.
So the fire department I saw is comfortable with the design, because I know this is a main route from the Newton Corner fire station to, say, BC, for example.
Yes, that's correct. And again, in working with them, we did change, we did lengthen the ramp slightly. Once we did do that, fire was very happy with the speeds they were able. They feel it won't severely impact their response time, which is what really they're concerned about, and also damaging their trucks, as had happened historically with the old style speed bumps, which we are definitely not using in the city.
So do you envision changing the location of the stop signs on Franklin?
Meg, can you confirm, or Isaac?
He's still on mute.
You're muted, Mr. Khan.
Can you answer?
Yes,
to him?
sorry. I believe the stop sign will be moved back slightly from the intersection. We realize that there's an issue with the sight lines between the southbound Waverly Street traffic and the eastbound Franklin Street traffic in particular. What the raised intersection will do is slow both of those traffic streams so that they are better able to see each other and stop for each other. It slows the Waverly Street traffic down enough, and it also it encourages the Franklin Street approach to stop at the stop sign, slow down for the ramp, stop at the stop sign, and then kind of, you know, you're like at an elevated level, which encourages like a very slow kind of proceeding through the intersection. What raised intersections are generally demonstrated to do is reduce the speeds of the major street traffic, in this case Waverly Street, and also significantly reduce both incidence of crashes as well as severity of crashes, because the vehicles are generally moving much slower.
No, I appreciate that. My question is really knowing the sight lines there, if you're going east, particularly if you're going eastbound on Franklin, so you're going towards the upper part of Franklin, you're going up a hill. I think we have to be very careful about not moving the stop sign too far back, because the visibility, the ability of a driver on Franklin to actually stop and see oncoming cars in either direction could be impaired. So I don't know if you have final drawings there or not, but I think that's something that very close attention needs to be paid to.
No,
it's
thank you,
probably
Counselor.
not
And
typical.
a stop sign is something that we can move very easily. That's minor construction. We install this, that's something we do in-house even, so that could be done multiple times on the spot by our staff.
Counselor, can I yield to Counselor Baker because I think he has a question on that?
No, just some history. I think before any of the people on this call were involved, I was involved in a redesign of Franklin and Waverly back during the Warren administration. And part of the difficulty, there were a number of crashes, and I actually did an analysis of the crash reports for the 5 years leading up to the time that I was involved in it. And it turned out that the majority of the crashes, by a significant number, were cars coming up Franklin going eastbound, running into cars on Waverly. It wasn't cars on Waverly hitting cars on Franklin, which is what you would think, because it's a higher speed. You know, you're going south, and the problem, it turned out, was that the stop sign was so far back, and there are 3 magnificent sycamore trees on the northwest corner of that intersection, which are really specimen trees that are, to my knowledge, I know of no one other neighborhood in the city that has the sycamores like that. And there was a great effort to try and protect those trees. So one of the issues that I hope the design will clarify is the protection for the trees and against any damage as part of the reconstruction. But leaving that aside, the solution was to actually square up the intersection. It was a curved radius, and so the intersection was redesigned to square it up, put in the light system up there, which is not a stoplight, but just a pedestrian activated walk light. In order to square it up so that the stop signs could move closer to Waverly Avenue so the cars would at least have the chance to stop and then look rather than stop far back and then start forward. Now, what I understand from talking to the transportation planner is an analysis of the more recent data indicate that most of the crashes are now from cars coming down Waverly hitting cars on Franklin, not the other way around. But I think it would be pretty ironic to redesign this and then go back to the old problem. So I hope that as part of this the more focused discussion on how the road is designed, there's some clarification about those stop signs and the stopping distances needed and how it works. What happens to the trees? What happens to the abutting properties where there's going to be changes in the curbing and all of the bollards and what kind of pedestrian access that provides. So I just wanted to give that historical perspective. The other thing I'd just like to say, if I can, for anybody who's watching who's emailed me, I found out today my email has been locked, and it also is a conflict with my city, my non-city email. So I'm now, I think, going to solve that problem and be able to communicate more effectively. I plead guilty to incompetence, but not neglect. So anyway, that's the.
We've kept you fully informed, Counselor Baker, even when your city email wasn't
I know.
working. May I just ask a couple more
Can I
questions?
just introduce
Oh,
some
please.
people before?
Sure.
So we also been joined by Counselor Gentile, who's on the committee from Ward 4. And I saw Counselor Block from Ward 4 and Counselor Lucas from Ward 2. I think that's everybody. Go
So
ahead.
just, man,
Yeah.
two other follow-up questions. One, relates to the design of Franklin going eastbound, because that obviously goes up a hill and now will be going up a little bit more. I'd ask, you don't have to answer this tonight, but I'd ask in your design consideration that you give some thought to winter weather and what that might be like for an automobile that's going up a fairly steep hill, stopping and is in, slush or a frozen road surface, and what issues that might cause. And I don't know the answer to that, but I do think it's important to factor that in. Last question relates to the bollards. There are very few places with bollards in the city. I know there were some put up on Grant Ave, for example, Grant Street, excuse me. But what are you envisioning for bollards? Are you envisioning them on all four corners? Are you envisioning, something that's a foot off the ground? Are you envisioning something that's 4 feet off the ground? What they'll look like? I mean, frankly, to put, large bollards on each corner there, A, may not be necessary, and B, might be rather unsightly. Obviously, we want to make sure that it's safe, so I'd be interested in your thinking there. And I'd also finally ask that when you do get around to doing your design work, that you actually talk to the immediate neighbors, particularly on the four corners, but also maybe going a couple houses in, because I don't think many people knew about this project coming before facilities, and understandably, there's no public hearing, but it's something that was clearly a lot of intense interest in the immediate neighborhood. So the last question, if you would, please.
Ned, can you touch on design specifics? Or are we not at that point yet? We may not be at that point, Council.
If you're not, that's fine. What I'd ask then is that as you get there, if you would notify the Ward 7 councilors and give us an opportunity to help you meet with the immediate neighbors. Councilors Grossman, Baker, and I can coordinate that, and that way you can get input from the folks who are going to be most directly affected by this. But with
No,
that,
most definitely. We'd be happy to do that, and thank you for the offer, and we will definitely take you up on that. We'll have Terry Crowley coordinate, and she's our outreach to all the residents normally also, but we will definitely take you up on that. We are early on, so we could, input again, bollards are not a major part of the construction, so, and there are many, many different types of bollards. We could find something, I'm sure that, I know what you're saying, the reflective yellow really stand out and can be unsightly. And we probably don't need that type of reflectivity on this project. So yeah, we'd be happy to discuss.
I think that'd be terrific, and I just want to thank you. I'm done, but I want to thank you again for getting this done. This is something that was a very high priority for the immediate neighborhood, and I think it's going to be a significant improvement. So thank you very much, Commissioner, Mr. Cog.
So,
Thank you.
Counselor Leary, then Kalis, then Baker, and then.
I'm good.
I think this is one area where I have a little more historic perspective than Councilor Baker, because I grew up on that corner and lived there from 1968 to 1989. That was after the horses, but, you know. But I still remember someone walking a horse on Waverly Ave.
Before e-bikes,
I
correct?
remember when they had that paint
I
looking by
I
like this.
yield to Superior antiquity.
And I had family lived in 3 out of those 4 corners at some point too. So I know the traffic has gotten a lot worse in the last few number of years, especially since I was a kid. I actually wanted to follow up on Councilor Laredo's point about the bollards. So Commissioner, you know that there's these are bollards as opposed to flex posts. And I'm thinking of the flex posts on California and Chapel Street.
Yes.
Which are
Now,
pretty unsightly.
these are the permanent bollards, not the temporary flex
Okay, they're
posts. These
permanent.
provide actual crash protection.
Okay, will we be able to sort of see the design, because this is only,
Yeah, I think that's what you're saying.
yeah, okay. I'm in full support of this project. I think it's really, for what I've found is that really cars coming down Waverly Avenue downhill, they really pick up speed. And they just go too fast, and really it's speed that's the danger here, plain and simple in my book. And as long as the fire department is okay with it, and I appreciate the effort you went to include them in the discussion and the design to make sure that it wouldn't be difficult for them to get their trucks through during emergencies. So I'm very happy to hear that. So I'm in full support. The only question I have is, will this accommodate bikers too? How will it impact bicyclists going up and going through that intersection?
Well, the ramps are the entire width of the intersection, so they would just have to deal with that slight incline. It's very gradual. It's, as I said, it's nothing like a speed bump or hump. And if you want to really experience it, it's right on Beethoven at Puritan. Very, very similar design.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
You all set?
I'm all set.
Counselor Kalis, do you want to talk about this intersection or the one in your ward?
The other one.
So can I call on Counselor Baker first? And we can close out that discussion on Waverly?
I suppose, yes.
Thank you. I'll be brief though. I just want to indicate my support as well. I think Councilor Laredo spoke for me. But I did want to just say that I hope that we'll have a chance to look at the design to make sure that those issues like the trees and the stop signs and the details of design that you don't want to come back after the fact and say, golly, I wish we'd done something a little different here. I think the basic idea is really very useful and great.
Okay, Counselor Getz, are you on this one? or
No,
the
I'm
other?
good.
Okay, so Counselor Kalis.
Okay, so I wasn't aware that this was going to be proposed at Brookline and Hartman. Initially, I think it's probably a good idea, but I'd really like to understand your thinking behind it, especially with Spalding there, how you treat that differently than some of the other raised intersections that you've done because it's right at where a school is. And can you talk about, is there crash data? Is there speeding data? I know there is some speeding data further down on Brookline, but why this intersection? And if you could just talk through that, that would be great.
Sure, Isaac or Ned, you want to touch on that and the traffic calming process, how we grade these?
Yeah, exactly. I can take an initial step. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, Brookline Street and Waverly Ave were both very high priorities at the time. That does factor in speed data that we collect, vehicle volumes, crashes, what are the pedestrian generators nearby, such as the school, like that's already giving it some additional score as well. As far as race table intersections go, we have looked at the statistics and they are some of the most effective traffic measures possible. They also are helpful in that they don't pinch bikes, like perhaps some bump out designs could. Not every bump out design, but some do. So and also given that these are fairly high volume roadways that also experience different kinds of vehicles, some being the larger size, this provides a very sturdy design that also slows vehicles down. If needed, we can connect and look back at what exactly went into the score at the time. But that's kind of a high level summary of why it was so high.
Okay, and then, so it's crash data, you're saying, and speeding data right there?
Correct, plus being near the school.
Yeah, it looks like the crash rate, in that section of Brookline Street was, like 3.37 per million entering vehicles, which is, you know, more than 6 times the sort of, you know, Boston area average for an unsignalized intersection. So it's really, you know, a lot of crashes, you know, and you have, again, high volumes, relatively high speeds, and the offset intersection results in, you know, quite a number of crashes, and you know, it is, you know, with the school right there, it is very important to slow the speeds down and, you know, reduce crashes, reduce crash severity.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the slowing down. I just don't know that this is the best way. I mean, I looked at Puritan and Beethoven. I guess you're saying that, has the data played out there that it actually has reduced? Because what I mean, I don't know. I've gone through that intersection many times.
Yeah, the Beethoven Puritan raised intersection has been very effective at reducing speed. It reduced the 85th percentile speed on Beethoven. 85th percentile is the speed at which, you know, 85% of vehicles are traveling at or below that speed. It's kind of like the maximum speed that drivers are typically sort of comfortable driving.
Mm-hmm.
It was reduced from 36 miles per hour for a road with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, down to about 26 miles per hour.
Okay.
So significant reduction.
Yeah, that's compelling. That's good. And then in terms of design, you're thinking about permanent bollards as well for this. I just want to make sure in terms of, you're going to have there's a lot that there's safety measures.
Counselor Kalis, could you repeat that, because we lost half of their sentence?
Oh yeah, I was asking about the design, the bollards, and if they'll be permanent there as well, because there's a lot of kids that are crossing there.
Yes, Counselor, these will both have the permanent crash protection bollards, just for that reason, the extra pedestrian safety.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Getz?
Just a quick question about cost. Whoops, it's not done.
Do you have more questions, Counselor Kalis?
No.
No, I want that. What's going on? You know, in terms of the funding for this, it seems as if it's coming from ARPA dollars, the 2 million of ARPA dollars. So are we going to be, you know, able to use more of these dollars in other sites? Or is this going to eat up this budget, this $2 million number?
No, the estimates for both of these will be around 750, 800,000 is our conceptual estimate.
Okay, Counselor Wright?
Thank you. Actually, that was kind of part of what I was asking. In TAG, they said these are about 400,000 each, and I love this. And our traffic calming budget is 400,000, which would only pay for one, but this is coming out of ARPA, so not out of traffic calming, correct?
That is correct, Counselor.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? We have a motion on this one. Counselor Rado.
I'll move approval.
Okay, Counselor Rado has moved approval. All those in favor? Any other discussion?
Looks like Counselor Wright has her hand up.
I think, Counselor Wright, do you still have your hand up?
No, I'm trying to get it down, sorry.
Okay. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Abstentions? So it's unanimous.
And the record show that I'm not voting because I'm not a member of the committee.
And,
I just
right.
didn't want my
No, I
silence to be
think that's
misconstrued.
important.
And we've also been joined by Counselor Oliver and Counselor Oliver from Ward 1 and Counselor Bixby from Ward 6. Okay,
Thank you, folks. I have to go back and grade some papers.
all right.
Thank you, Mark.
Next item is 216-24. Excuse me, Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to transfer funds from several DPW accounts resulting from FY24 savings in various DPW accounts to another account as part of the city's Accelerated Roads Program. Commissioner McGonigal.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The request is to transfer $2 million from these listed accounts. These are snow accounts and also DPW streets full-time wages account where we have some attrition savings. This will fund the upcoming FY25 transportation network improvements, our $9.5 million total that we budget for the transportation network improvements. Having these funds available now will allow us to bid early for this FY25 work to be performed. And DPW will be back before Public Facilities next month to present that plan for the FY25 street and sidewalk upcoming work. Happy to answer any questions.
Counselor Rado.
So I want to understand, Commissioner, the financial piece a little bit better. Fiscal year 25 budget has 9.5 in it for roads and sidewalks?
That is correct. That's what we budget for, yes.
And this is an additional amount above that, or is this meant to be part of the 9.5 as budgeted?
Yes, sorry if I wasn't clear. This was meant to be part of the 9.5, so that historically that is never fully funded. We do fund that every year with our override funding from 2010, which is 1.25 million. Our Chapter 90, which is just about 2.25 million. And in our streets and transportation budgets, which are all part of the transportation network program, that is about 1.25 million. So with this 2 million would bring us to about 4.8 million of the 9.5 we will need to complete all the work in FY25.
And otherwise, this money would fall to free cash and then would be allocated out of free cash?
I believe so, yes.
So the mayor, when she's put forth her budget, anticipated that we would have this roughly $2 million of funding in essentially carryover savings from unused funds this year. Is that correct, Mr. Yo?
Mr. Yo, why don't you, your hand is raised, so why don't you speak?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so Jim did highlight the fact we do certainly shoot and have been able to achieve, except during COVID, the 9.5 million a year, sometimes even going over it using ARPA funds. That includes a variety of funding sources to get to that. So certainly when we have salary savings out of DPW, we do like to use that to fund to help us get to the 9.5. So that's what we're doing here for the FY25. We're not fully going to be funded yet. We have the savings. We will be looking at other free cash options to help us get to full funding. We'll get there. Jim certainly will then be laying out sometime soon, sounds like, the FY25 program. So we'll be certainly planning on that level of spending, at least that level of spending for FY '25.
But Mr., if I could just follow up, Mr. Yo, but if we did not appropriate this, and I'm not suggesting that we don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. This money would fall to free cash at the end of the year, right?
That's correct, yeah, it
And so
does.
we'd
And
be
then
adding the
we
free
would-
cash
then
by
We
another-
would just wait, we would wait until the fall at the earliest to then put this forward for the same purpose. It's just that, as Jim highlighted, we like to get this done sooner so that we can do contracting and we can save money and get the best contractors around using that method.
I'm not disagreeing with that goal, but I do think, and I'll leave it to finance to focus on this further. I don't want to say misleading, but because that's not fair, but perhaps confusing is a better word, because you really are cutting your potential free cash by $2 million. That's what you're doing here. You're pre-allocating it to another use rather than allowing it to fall to free cash, which would really be probably more technically accurate. And then you have obviously an increase in your free cash. You have a shortfall in your 9.5 goal, and you're going to use free cash to fund it. So you don't have to respond to that, but I do think that's something finance may want to pay a little more attention to.
Sure.
And I'll leave it at that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Can I ask a
Yep,
question?
and again, this has been done many years in the past, and this is
Yeah.
certainly a good way of early on getting funding for this important program, so.
My question is, will you be able to spend this money on this summer's road work as opposed to waiting it and spending it next spring?
We may, that's one of the main reasons, Counselor, for doing this, because we need to bid this work out.
Yeah.
So if we were to do that, as soon as we receive these funds, some of this work could start in the fall. We can pave right into November.
Okay. Okay, is there anybody else? No, so, do we have a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously. And the last one before Washington Street is 191-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend a total of $200,000 from the Stormwater Management Operating Reserve of FY 2024 operating budget to fund the design and installation of a subsurface system that will manage stormwater from Myrtle Street and McGrath Park. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This request is for $200,000 from the Stormwater Operating Reserve. This is to install a subsurface detention system which will infiltrate stormwater from Myrtle Street and McGrath Park. This work is being performed in conjunction with the PRC improvement project to McGrath Park. The system will collect and infiltrate stormwater runoff from Myrtle Street storm system and McGrath Park drainage, helping to reduce our phosphorus load into the Charles River. This system will reduce our phosphorus load by 4.6 pounds per year approximately, which will be calculated into our total phosphorus load reduction as required through our NIPD's MS4 permit. As I said, we have been working closely, and Luis Perez Demarizi is here from Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Luis has been leading this project and has been working closely with us to incorporate this as originally we hadn't planned to have any stormwater mitigation put into this, but we're looking to move this forward so we can include it as part of the project prior to finishing the improvements. Otherwise, it would never make sense to come back to this area in quite some time. Happy to answer some questions, and Luis also is here. Thank you.
Councilor Leary?
Commissioner, I'm really happy that you're being thoughtful about stormwater improvement projects wherever you're doing work, that you're going the extra mile here. I think that's really important. And, you know, it's gonna be a long, long haul to reduce our phosphorus load. We've got like another 1,900 pounds to go. I wanted to ask you, what type of underground system are you using? Is it gonna be gravel or perforated pipes or some kind of tank? Do you have a model in?
Yes, Counselor. So part of this funding is for the design also, but we've identified a system through Luis's consultant. And that system is precast concrete structures that the water will flow through. And obviously there'll be a base material there consisting of sand and gravel. Those are the materials that will really filter the water. So the water that filters through that and infiltrates back into the ground, that's where we receive our phosphorus reduction. So this will all be underground. You won't see any of it. And it's a proven storm trap system is the product.
Okay. Will it require any significant maintenance?
There is some minor maintenance that comes along with that, but not significant at all. This is a really good product and really one of the most cost-effective BMPs, best management practices you can implement.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Committee and Commissioner, if I may add as well, we'll be adding a pre-treatment area so that DPW can go in and clean out sediment and such prior to reaching the entire system.
Counselor Gantz?
Yeah, is there any sort of modeling or any kind of schematics that we can look at? Because it sounds like it's a system that we can put in multiple places.
Yes, as we go along with the design, we'll be happy to share all the literature. Because it's early on, we didn't have the proper backup for this, but we'll be happy to provide that. And you will be seeing us requesting these going forward, as this is a really good subsurface system that, as I said, it is minimal maintenance. The truck that was just approved at our last meeting by you all, we can use that for cleaning out these areas also, as Luis just spoke about.
Okay, anybody else? Do we have a motion?
I'll still do the motion to approve.
Okay.
That's good.
I'm on a roll.
You're on a
obviously.
roll.
You're a great job.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions? All right, also approved unanimously.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, the last item, the pièce de résistance for the night. 189-24, approval of the 75% design of Washington Street pilot. We're on to the mayor requesting the approval of the 75% design. And we are joined at the table by Director Heath, who will introduce, and Assistant, no, Deputy Director, I'm not sure what the right title is.
Camping here.
Deputy Director, would you introduce your consultants?
Be happy to.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Jed Martin is here, who's the Director of Transportation.
Planning. Correct. Excellent. So, yeah, we have our consultants here. We also have our colleagues from DPW online and Parks and Rec as well, all of whom have been working on the Washington Street pilot. We're here this evening to present plans, 75% plans to the council. So our consultant team from the beginning on this, from the very beginning, has been HSH. Jessica Litza is here, and Brian Jerb is the landscape design consultant. So we have a small presentation for you this evening, and then we're happy to answer questions.
Great.
Great, I'll kick things off. So as Director Heath said, we're here tonight to present the plans for the Washington Street pilot project. Next one. So tonight we'll be providing an overview of the project including the latest design, similar examples, responses to questions and comments we've heard, and details for project monitoring and evaluation, as well as the next steps for the project. So again, this has been a really collaborative effort, and I think this project has really benefited from close review from our colleagues across multiple departments, particularly DPW, Parks and Rec, as well as our consultant team and our project advisory group, including Councilors Albright, Councilor Wright, and community members. And we have a number of our team members here tonight to present and help answer questions. So how we got here, we kicked off this particular effort in winter and spring 2023 and studied existing conditions, planned projects in the area, including the Dunsinese or Newton Crossing, the planned dog park, as well as collected baseline data, coordinated with other city departments, groups, and did initial engagement. In last fall, we used that information to develop a number of concept alternatives and present those to the public. Following a public meeting last fall, we issued a survey to solicit feedback and a ranking of the proposed alternatives. So this information, along with the expertise of our advisory group and project team, really led us to a preferred alternative that we selected to advance. If you recall, in January, we were in front of this committee to present that preferred concept, and the council did vote to support moving forward to advance that design. And since then, we've been working hard to further develop that design, do more engagement, more outreach along Washington Street, and we presented the plans that we'll be showing you tonight at a public meeting last month. I know many members of the council did attend, and our presentation tonight incorporates quite a bit of the feedback we heard from that meeting. So the limits of this project are about a 3/4 of a mile stretch of Washington Street from the intersection with Chestnut Street to the west, right outside West Newton Square, to Lowell Avenue to the east. And this particular stretch, this pilot will help us lay the groundwork for a potentially larger reconstruction project down the line, which could include the remaining portions of Washington Street. So the goals of the project are to create a more safe, attractive, friendly, welcoming environment for everyone along Washington Street, residents, visitors, businesses. And to achieve these goals, we'll be creating a 2 to 3 lane roadway, looking to reduce speeds, reduce conflicts, reducing likelihood of injuries, and also by improving pedestrian and bicycle connectivity and comfort, retaining parking to the greatest extent possible, and increasing the greenery and landscaping along the corridor. So while we started this effort about 1.5 years ago, it really begins with the Washington Street Vision Plan, which was adopted by the council in late 2019. The Vision Plan sought to create a Washington Street that prioritizes people and creates an attractive, safe environment for everyone. This pilot is in line with many of the priorities and goals of the Vision Plan, including a recommendation to test before the city invests. So the Vision Plan suggests testing a redesign along a portion of Washington Street first before investing the time and resources into permanent improvements. And the permanent design will require state funding. So this pilot allows us to relatively quickly and inexpensively test some concepts while also making improvements to a section of Washington Street that really suffers from high speeds and poor pedestrian infrastructure. So the scope of this project is almost all low-cost temporary improvements. So these are things such as pavement markings, signage, flex posts, other temporary elements, and landscaping, which doesn't significantly modify the roadway streetscape. What it won't do is, it won't include repaving the road, moving any curb lines, any utility or drainage work, or any property takings. So the pilot design that's based on that preferred sort of endorsed concept is one that has one travel lane each direction with additional left turn lanes, a buffered shared use path, which you see here on the right, which is along the south side of Washington Street adjacent to the Mass Pike, new landscaping along the Pike, and parking generally maintained on each side. Where we lose some parking is where we need to accommodate left turn lanes or improve visibility at intersections. And this design aligns with both the project goals and the vision plan goals. It'll shrink the feeling of the roadway, reduce speeds, we're adding accessible bus platforms, overall improving safety, making it easier to cross the street, which also will make it easier to use the parking on the south side of the street, and it will help provide a visual buffer against the Pike. So we have heard some questions about why a two-way shared use path along the south side. Why not put that on the north side? Why not have one direction bike lane on either side? And there's a couple reasons there. One major one is the number of crossings and potential for conflict. So we do actually have a pretty unique opportunity here, having the Mass Pike run along the south side, in that we have very few crossings. So we've got 10 commercial driveways, really just on that western portion, just outside West Newton Square on the south side. On the north side, we've got, I don't remember what the number, almost 40, I think, driveways and side streets that you need to cross. So every time you're crossing there, you're creating a potential for conflict with pedestrians and bikes and cars. So by putting that path on the south side, it really is a great, safe pathway for those bikes and pedestrians. And it also makes it easier for people trying to turn from the side streets onto Washington Street. For a number of reasons, which we'll also get into with reducing the number of lanes, but certainly putting the bikes and pedestrians on the south side helps. Also gives us an opportunity to fill in gaps. I think most people are probably aware this stretch is really lacking in sidewalks along the south side. There either are little dirt path or there's no sidewalk at all. So this gives us an opportunity to fill in those gaps as well, really increasing connectivity through this section of Washington Street. So now I'll hand things over to Jessica.
Thanks. I'm just going to exit out of the presentation to walk through an aerial plan showing the design. How good that's showing. So I'm going to zoom in here and just walk through some of the major components of the design along Washington Street. I'll start at Chestnut Street and then head east. A lot of this is, posted online if you want to take a closer look onto anything. I know we've had the roll plan up on the website as well so that folks can zoom in and kind of pan around at their own time. And so starting at Chestnut, we're trying to maintain the same lane use today that exists at the Chestnut Street intersection in order to maintain that capacity that we need for vehicles getting through the signal. So both eastbound and westbound, the lane use will stay the same, approaching the signal on Washington Street. For bikes traveling eastbound, they'll be in the bike lane like they are today, but we're going to mark out a new crossing for them to enter into our south side facility. For bikes coming from our south side path and exiting the area, we will be asking people to utilize the push button on the sidewalk so that they can get that exclusive signalized phase, so that when they're crossing to get to the existing facility on the other side at the project limits, there's no conflicts with vehicles at the intersection. And then traveling east, as Jen had mentioned, we have the south side path. It's going to be separated from the on-street parking with what we're calling modular curbing. And I have an image of an example of that right down here. One of the differences between our design and this example image is that, this is shown a buffer between the path and the travel lane. Our buffer will be between the path and the parking lane. So you'll be even further from vehicles traveling along. And then we are proposing some flex posts on top of the modular curbing so that they're more visible to drivers, less likely to accidentally be struck.
All right, I'll be.
Traveling east, we provide a short stretch of a two-way left turn lane in the center of the road. So this provides one lane in each direction with the turning lane in the middle. This is just to help safety and reduce conflicts with the abundance of commercial driveways in this section that are on both sides of the street. So it allows people that are just traveling through to be able to do that, and people turning to kind of be able to enter into that lane and take their time to turn. Traveling east, we've been in close coordination with the Newton Crossing construction for their development project, and we've incorporated their work zone into our plans. And so that's kind of this gray hatching up here that you see, that's their temporary work zone setup. And that will be in place when we go to install. So we've been making sure that we're in communication with them, and then also starting to talk about once their construction's done, what would this section of the roadway look like in its final condition, and make sure that that's covered as well. And so through here we still have that path on the south side. Coming to Armory Street, we open up a left turn lane here to facilitate easier turns. And then we're proposing an improved crosswalk on the opposite side of that with new pedestrian curb ramps and a modular refuge island. This is an example image of what that refuge island might look like. And the island's important for safety because it allows you to cross a single lane of travel at a time, so that you're not having to look both ways while crossing at each stage. And it helps reduce, the likelihood that like someone coming in one direction stops for you, but someone coming in the other direction doesn't. And then we're doing bus stop improvements along the corridor. So this is the first example of that. We're extending the bus stop on the north side and putting markings there, which is in line with MBTA standards. On the south side, we're putting in a modular platform. And here's kind of a rendering of that. And it's basically a raised platform. It allows for accessible boarding and alighting, so that if anyone's using a mobility device, they can get on and off the buses more easily. And then it will provide a ramp down into the crosswalk for people to access either the path or the crossing. And it allows anyone waiting for the bus to be outside of the path, so that you're not kind of in the way of people trying to travel on that. Going towards Cross Street, very similar design here. We provide a left turn lane with the crossing opposite the left turn lane with an island in the middle. We are proposing to consolidate the bus stop here because it's just so close to the Armory stop. That way we can utilize some of this room for some of the safety and daylighting improvements that we're doing at the intersection. And that's been proposed in coordination with the MBTA. Heading east, it's providing one travel lane in each direction. We're providing the improved bus stop, crossing, and a left turn lane onto Eddy Street. We're providing left turn lane onto Brookside Avenue and Walker Street. We have a new crosswalk proposed at Walker Street. And we're also looking wherever we have room to maintain parking on the south side, especially against the Walker Park where the future dog park will be, so that there will be access to that. And then finally, approaching Lowell Avenue, we open back up into the 2 lanes that are there today to provide that capacity at the signal. Bikes will be provided markings to transition out using the exclusive pedestrian phase at the signal again. And then in the opposite direction, we are proposing a left turn only lane so that people waiting to take a left will have a dedicated lane, and it helps kind of transition into our reduced cross section heading into our study area. So those are the main components. Jumping back into the presentation, Brian can talk about the landscaping elements.
Well, as Jen mentioned, our extends our Chestnut Street to Lowell Ave. And on the Chestnut Street end of the project, we have essentially a typical urban condition of street tree plantings and tree pits. The other end towards Lowell Ave is we have a larger green swath as Washington Street veers away from the MBTA area, and that's where the future dog park will be. So we're focusing our resources on the blue box, essentially you see in the middle of the screen there, and there's an image of that. It's the most exposed to the highway and the MBTA tracks. And it's relatively unsightly, so we're going to do our best to screen that with the space we have allotted to us, which is essentially the 6-foot swath between the curb you see there and the existing fence. That's it. We worked closely with the Parks and Rec Department on the design of this 6-foot swath. And we'll go into that in a little more detail in terms of what's being planted there on the next slide. But on this one, we'll just note that we're saving all the existing trees and shrubs that are out there today in areas where the parcel does widen, and that's adjacent to the dog park on both sides. We can plant larger trees, evergreen trees, to help with some screening along that edge. And we're hoping to also introduce down the corridor 5 or 6 trees in pots to at least draw some of that green into the corridor. And these are large, 7-foot diameter pots. So zooming in, there we go. Typical condition down the corridor, our goal is to plant a densely, a shrub layer of roughly 4 to 5 feet, which will screen the fence and most of your views to the highway beyond. We've heard, loud and clear in the community meetings that there's a desire to have as many evergreen plantings as possible and introduce what existed there today, because it's proven to be do fairly well in that condition. So there's an increased amount of bayberries and eastern red cedar. We've introduced inkberries and so on. So that'll kind of cover that lower plane along the fence. We'd also like to introduce some texture and interest above that. So it's screening your views beyond. So there's a concrete wall over the highway, and we'll get just a little bit higher with some flowering trees and some maybe birch trees and other smaller trees, with our constraints being that we don't want trees that are large, typical canopy trees that have horizontal branching that'll go out over the MBTA tracks. So that's a limitation. These trees will, and shrubs, will provide some aid in terms of air pollution, in terms of the density of the leaf structure and the size of the leaves and so on. They can serve as means that air particulates can land on the leaves and stop them from filtering through to the bike path along that edge. So the denser we plant them, obviously the more surface area there is for particulates to land on, which is helpful, and ultimately be washed off with the next rainstorm. We saw this rendering a bit earlier, but here's just an example kind of showing what we're hoping to achieve here. As dense a planting as we can in that 4 to 5 foot range of shrubs, with an additional canopy above that to provide a little bit of filtering that view beyond, and possibly a little bit of shading time along that corridor.
Jen Martin, as you know, I'm the new Director of Transportation Planning, and while I'm new to this role, I've been following this project closely because of the great interest of this as a Safe Routes to School project, which was the role that I was in before. So I'm going to talk a little bit about speeds and driver reaction time. So one of the desired project outcomes is for the design elements to lead to a reduction in speeds of the fastest moving vehicles, to make it safer and more comfortable for people to move through this corridor, whether they're driving, walking, rolling, or biking. Traveling at faster speeds means that drivers have covered more ground in the time it takes them to react to something that they see ahead, and then they have a longer braking distance before they can stop after they react. The longer stopping distance at faster speeds also makes it challenging for a driver to see a car pulling out or a pedestrian entering a crosswalk from the distance that they need to be allowed to stop. So you can see here we're modeling the crosswalk at the Armory Street at 25 miles per hour and then at 55 miles per hour. You can also see the car pulling out there at Trader Joe's. So to be able to see someone in the crosswalk with enough time to stop is a challenge at higher speeds. Crashes involving vehicles traveling at higher speeds also occur with more impact and force than lower speed crashes, so are more likely to result in serious injury or death of the person hit. So this slide illustrates there's a 13% likelihood of a pedestrian being killed or sustaining a serious injury when hit by a driver going 20 miles an hour. On Washington Street, almost all the vehicles are traveling faster than 20 miles an hour. The likelihood of death or serious injury increases to 40% at 30 miles per hour. On this corridor, over 40 miles, over 3/4 of the vehicles on the corridor are traveling faster than 30 miles an hour. And then finally, over 40 miles per hour, the likelihood of a serious injury or death goes up to 73%. And we did see about 7% of vehicles traveling faster than 40 miles an hour. Slower speeds also benefit the drivers, making it easier and more comfortable to make a left turn because drivers will be better able to see the gaps in oncoming traffic, and oncoming drivers will have more time to react and slow down as needed to allow someone to safely turn in front of them with that left turn. The lane reduction means drivers will only be crossing a single lane of oncoming traffic, which will also make it easier to turn left. Eliminating the second travel lane also makes it easier and safer to cross the street as a pedestrian. Because a driver's view isn't blocked by a car in that second lane. You can see in the slide the car to the right is fully blocking view of the pedestrian. And with a shortened crossing distance between the curb and then the median traffic island, it will also make it more comfortable for the pedestrian to cross the street because they're crossing a shorter distance and exposed to an oncoming vehicle for a shorter amount of time.
So we wanted to look at some example projects within Massachusetts and show some of the statistics that road diets within the state have had on reducing speed and crashes, some of the concerns we just walked through. So here on this slide are just 3 examples. The first one was in Hingham, Massachusetts. The state did a road diet pilot out here, and through that pilot project they found that they saw a 5-mile-an-hour decrease in speeds, and that the project did not seem to result in a travel time increase or create traffic diversions, which have been some of the concerns raised for Washington Street. On Route 135 in Wellesley, a road diet project was found to reduce severe injury occurrences by 69% and had an 8 to 11 mile an hour speed reduction in the 85th percentile speed. And then lastly, along Nonantum Road through Boston Newton and Watertown, a road diet along that road showed about 32% fewer severe injury occurrences after the implementation. And just for reference, we have the daily volumes of all of these, with the Washington Street volume falling right in the middle at 12,000. So a lot of these projects were occurring on higher volume roadways than Washington Street. And then we have an example of a project that was just recently completed construction through the south end of Boston on Tremont Street. The reason we are just showing this project, it has a lot of similar design elements. However, a lot of those elements were permanently installed, which is why it had a much higher construction cost. So a relatively similar project length to ours, but a construction cost of about $8 to $9 million, but featured some of the floating parking and the bus stop platforms that we're proposing in like a temporary manner on this pilot project. So just some of the key takeaways that we got from these were that, there are road diet projects in Massachusetts that have proven to reduce severe injury collisions, reduce vehicle speeds, and have had little to no travel time increase or traffic diversion impact on the areas around them. And so to date, as Jen had mentioned, we've had a couple previous meetings, we've heard some concerns. This slide lists a lot of the main concerns that we had heard previously. And then the whole next set of slides kind of walks through some more information regarding those concerns. So one of the first questions and concerns we got in the previous meeting was, what data have we collected? This came up in terms of evaluating posts, but also what have we already collected? So there's a lot on this slide, but essentially all of the lines are showing where we've gotten automatic traffic recorder counts, also what we call ATR counts. Those are like tubes across the road. They count daily volume. Sometimes they include speed and classification data too. And then all of the circles are where we've gotten turning movement counts. So like how many people at an intersection are going left versus through versus right versus crossing in the crosswalk. It also captures bikes. So we've done quite a bit of data collection along this corridor to understand what the existing conditions are. These next bunch of slides I'm going to walk through really quickly because they're really data heavy, but we just wanted everyone to be able to have the data I think it's available on the website and was in the docket packet as well. So if you want to go back through it and flip in more detail, but essentially we collected 7-day volumes along Washington Street and found that generally there's about 12,000 vehicles a day traveling the road. Varies a little bit each day. Then we also got daily volumes on an average day on most of the major side streets shown here. With most of them being like much lower volume roads, apart from Lowell Avenue, Watertown Street, Chestnut Street. And then you can see Eddy has a bit more like cut through traffic than some of those other side streets. We also collected speed data. So Jen had walked through some of that earlier. The speed limit today is 35 miles an hour. I know we're looking to be changing that so that people are going slower. And we've just highlighted how many vehicles today are still going above that already pretty high speed limit out here. Bikes, we collected 5-hour bike volumes. We also captured how many are in the roadway versus sidewalk, which is what the different colors show. And so you can see there's a good amount of people today who do not feel comfortable riding in the road and are choosing to be on the sidewalk instead. And then last but not least, pedestrian counts. So we collected pedestrian counts at all of the intersections. Most of the volume of people crossing today are at the signals on each side of our project limits, so at Chestnut and at Lowell Avenue. Right, and then for the noise, air pollution, and heat island, we heard concerns about that being next to the Mass Pike. How will heat island impacts be affected by this project? And as Brian had walked through, we're trying to visually screen the pike with as much landscaping as we can within this project, which will, help move the needle a bit. But we weren't able to do more with like a more permanent noise barrier or, pollution barrier along there, just because the city doesn't own the fence against the rail. So we'd need state permission, and we were essentially told we can't do anything that would impact wind or structural loading of the fence, which eliminated some of our more like low cost, quick implementation solutions. So what we're hoping to do with this pilot is set the stage that a reduced cross-section here is feasible, because moving forward, any future project can build off of that by reducing the number of travel lanes. While we're not removing pavement with this project, it sets the stage for a future project that's moving curb line to be able to, and then it'll be better positioned to better address some of these concerns than if the road stays where it is. You'll stay with kind of that only 6-foot swath to really address these concerns. So it'll be much more challenging. So that's what we're hoping to kind of move forward with this project. And then parking. We got a lot of questions about parking. In some of the previous existing condition slide, we walked through existing demand of parking. We are losing some parking with this project. Where we're removing parking is in those areas of left turn pocket lanes where we just don't have the room to provide both a left turn lane and on-street parking on both sides. We're pulling back the location of parking next to some of the side streets to improve visibility for people turning in and out of the side streets, which was an existing safety concern that we identified. And then at some of the driveway crossings, that kind of section that Jen had mentioned earlier that had those 10 commercial driveways, we're pulling out some parking there where the path crosses those driveways so that anyone turning in and out of the driveways can see someone coming on the path, so that you're not like hidden behind a parked vehicle and then all of a sudden someone's trying to turn and you're in the crossing. So that's where we lose the most parking. But in general, we found that based on the existing demand, which we know could change in the future, we would expect only 64% of the parking in this section to be utilized. So we still think that there's plenty of parking on the corridor, knowing that some areas have more demand than others. This image on the screen shows 0 parking in front of the Newton Crossing development. This is accounting for their construction staging that's out right now. Once that staging goes away, I think they have like 12 parking spots slated, so this number would go up once that work zone goes away. And then there are some questions about left turn lanes. Why did we propose them at some side streets but not all side streets? How was that decided? And really it was decided based on volume. So the higher volume turning movements, wherever we could fit it, we gave a left turn lane. And then at Parsons Street and Harrington Street, the volumes were quite low. Projected into the future was 16 vehicles an hour or less. So those were not provided the left turn lanes. But you will still be allowed to turn left there, even if you don't have the dedicated left turn lane. So I think there was some confusion about that previously. We're not restricting lefts, you're just not given a dedicated lane. Washington at Lowell Avenue. We heard a lot of safety concerns about a lack of left turn signals at the intersection in the previous meeting. And we just wanted to walk through why we hadn't included it in this pilot project design. But the city is currently evaluating how they can address it separate from this project in kind of a tandem timeline. But with this project, likely any solution to add left turn lanes requires adding signals onto the existing mast arms. That essentially means adding weight and loading onto them. So we'd have to confirm that the foundations can handle that. They're pretty older style, so they likely may not be able to, in which case you would need a whole new mast arm. For this project, we don't have geotechnical boring information or underground survey at the intersection, which would take time and money to go out and get. And that's what would be required for us to be able to design and install a new mast arm, which I think is also beyond kind of the temporary scope of what we are looking at here for the pilot.
These next two slides are going to lay out some of the metrics, how we'll monitor them, and what we would consider a measure of success for the pilot. So we will be monitoring and reporting metrics at 1, 2, and 3 years after implementation. One of the major goals of the pilot is to reduce the average, the 85th percentile, and the maximum speed limits speeds to make it safer and more comfortable for all people who are traveling in and through this corridor. Another project goal is to reduce the number of serious crashes resulting in injury. There are currently an average of 5 serious crashes per year in this corridor. We will be monitoring the side streets and the alternative route traffic volumes to make sure they do not increase by more than 20% by the end of the pilot. We'll also be looking at pedestrian and bicycle volume annually and checking that people walking and biking feel safer and more comfortable than they currently do. We will be closely monitoring the parking utilization to make sure the parking supply and demand are balanced, making sure that the average weekday parking utilization remains below 90%. As Jessica mentioned, we are proposing that based on current conditions, it's more like 64%. We'll be monitoring the travel time between Chestnut Street and Lowell Ave and making sure that it's not adding more than 35%, which is just about 1 minute to the length of people's trips. We will also be closely working with emergency responders to make sure they aren't encountering response concerns. If those concerns do develop, those would be things that we would follow in the field and not wait to 1, 2, or 3 years to change. And then finally, we'll be monitoring the length of vehicle queues at the intersections in the pilot. In addition to looking at the annual metrics we'll be collecting and reporting on, we'll also be responding to more immediate concerns. We'll be taking a look at serious crashes and making sure that we respond within a month to look at potential causes and if anything in the design needs to be changed. We also can revisit the signal timings at the 2 project ends if vehicle queues become a concern. And finally, we'll be able to tweak pavement markings and signage throughout the pilot as needed. So where do we go from here? We are here tonight hoping that the committee will recommend approval and that the design will advance to City Council. After City Council approval, we will continue to refine the design within city departments. And then this fall, work on bid documents with a plan to hire a contractor by the end of this calendar year. And then 2025 through 2028, we will implement the plan and continue to evaluate at 1, 2, and 3 years. And this ends our presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Laredo, I just want to say something about there are a couple of people in the attendees who have raised their hand. I don't know if we'll see how this goes in the committee, but this is, if there's time, we can address that, but otherwise we're gonna keep it in committee. Councilor Laredo, you're first.
So, first of all, I'll start off by just generally saying I'm supportive of the plan, so I think it's a good thing we're doing this. I do have a whole bunch of questions. Certainly you've provided some more information than when I heard this last time, particularly about measurement and goals. But let me just try to walk through them, and I don't wanna monopolize the time here, so if I go on too long, I'll stop and let my
We'll let
colleagues
you
go
know.
ahead. You'll let me know, I know you will let me know, Councilor, no doubt about that. And if you don't, Councilor, I'll tell you. So, first question is, and I think you're trying to address this, but on those driveways on the south side near, West Newton Square, how is a driver gonna safely, say, exit the gas station or the Dunkin' Donuts or something like that, cross 2 bike lanes, but then maybe have to wait to turn, particularly if they're turning left, going westbound on Washington Street? How will that work, and how do you envision if there's a queue and there's 2 or 3 cars following? What's that gonna look like?
Yeah, so I think, we're trying to, at the commercial driveways, offset the parking, so we have like 20 feet of parking restricted on each side of the crossing. So that will improve some of those visibility concerns. But yeah, very likely you'll look both ways before pulling out across the path. And then if it's clear on the roadway, proceed. Otherwise, probably get in line with the parking and pause for the roadway gap and then finish, your turning maneuver.
Will, if you have one, let's say you have a pickup truck or something like that, okay? It edges out, the driver looks both ways, bike lane is clear, but I hope they don't then blast out onto Washington Street, because you probably won't be able to see sufficiently. So they're gonna stop. Are they gonna be stopping? Are they gonna be partially in the bike lane when they do?
A
How's that gonna
large
work?
truck could be, yeah.
So how's that gonna work for the cyclists, from a safety perspective?
The cyclist would need to pause. So if there's a cyclist I would hope that the driver would, before entering the bike lane, would look for cyclists. Seeing none, they would pull out again until they have visibility of the intersection and oncoming vehicles.
Right, but let's say it's rush hour, it's pretty busy on Washington Street. And the bike, comes eastbound, it's an experienced cyclist, maybe has made a right off of Chestnut going down. How do you avoid the interaction between somebody waiting in the bike lane and the cyclist coming through?
The cyclist would need to wait until it was clear to proceed.
Look, I don't have a particular answer for that. I just think that's something you're gonna wanna monitor really carefully.
Yeah.
Because I do see some conflict issues there. I don't have an answer for them. Next, you had set forth your goals, and can we go back to them, because that's really where I am most concerned. So let me suggest a couple things. Your measurements so far of current data look like they are mostly taken in the middle of winter, right? Looks like a January to February.
Except for the bikes for October.
Okay. I really think if we're gonna do this really properly, we need to have a much more robust data collection process, maybe 4 seasons. Doesn't have to be 2 weeks within 4 seasons, but really compare it differently, because bike traffic in the summer, for example, may be very different than bike traffic in the spring or the fall, or certainly in the winter. Same with pedestrian. I mean, the only thing you tracked during the fall was bikes. You didn't track pedestrians in the fall. And I would think, pedestrian usage in January is gonna be very different than pedestrian usage in June. So in order to really do an apples to apples comparison, I think you ought to have, a designated week in October, say, now, and then measure it every year for the next 3 years. Same thing in winter, same thing in spring, same thing in the summer. I think that will yield much more accurate data for what we're trying to do. Let's see, the 20% increase that you're forecasting in people using other routes, that actually seems pretty high to me, and I would be concerned about that. In other words, we're really trying to keep people off side streets, and if we're seeing a 20% increase in traffic on Cross Street, for example, I think that's a lot. So I would hope our goal is much lower for a successful project. When you look at some of your other goals, your average speed, closer to 25 miles per hour. I'd like to see what's the goal? Is the goal 28 miles an hour, 26 miles an hour? What's the goal? And articulate it?
Well, the goal is 25, but we're never gonna be able to get every vehicle to be going the same speed, so we just wanna see it moving closer to
Well,
that
you
goal.
will if there's enough traffic backup and no one can go quickly, but that's obviously not the goal.
Right.
My point is, give us a goal rather than closer to, because closer to doesn't help us if we're trying to achieve something, okay? So is the goal 30 miles per hour average, 28 miles per hour average? Just identify the goal and see if we meet it or not.
I don't think, no, and if the speed limit is 25, I don't think you wanna say your goal is 30.
Well,
No, but what I'm trying to understand is what's the goal of the pilot, not, obviously we want everybody theoretically to obey the speed limit at all times.
Well, I think what we're trying to set the stage for is what does success look like, and so I don't think we would say it was if we said our goal is 25 and the average speed is 26, I don't think that to most of us would be considered unsuccessful.
No, but if it goes from 32.5 to 32, I don't view that as success.
Fair enough.
Okay, so I'm just trying to suggest that you come up with, if it's 32 to 33, the goal is to get you to 28 to 30 or 26 to 28, whatever you think a reasonable goal is. Same thing to the 85% speed, just closer to 30 doesn't help me when I'm trying to assess success, that's all. Now, maybe others differ. Pedestrian bicycle volumes at peak times, that's a great goal. I presume you're gonna have different measurements for different times of year.
Well, I think to your point, we were kind of assuming of trying to target the same time as our original data collection, so I think we can work together if we're now gonna pivot to, multiple data collection sets a year, what does that look like spread across multiple?
And what we have for bikes is probably pretty close to peak. It was a 70-degree sunny day in October, school's in session.
One day?
One day, yeah.
Okay. I don't think one day analyses are sufficient when you're trying to measure,
This is a pilot.
I know, but if we're gonna measure success, I think getting better counts, more than just one day of data collection is important, it seems to me. I just put that out there, but.
Yeah, I think to our perspective, we went with 1 day pre-pilot because we're designing for the safest and most comfortable facilities regardless of the pedestrian and bike volume out here. I mean, if we showed that, 2 times as many bikes are riding, we would have the same design out here because it's the safe, comfortable option that makes sense for the context of the road.
You're gonna be asking the city to spend 28, 30, $40 million to do this work when it's done. The way we make the case to do that is to show that it has been a true success. And I think just saying we have, it feels safer or we have a couple more cyclists is not the same as saying, hey, we've met our goals, we got 20% more people out biking along Washington Street. I'm trying to set us up for getting this approved.
Just to be clear, Councilor, we're gonna ask the state to give us the,
Well, if we're gonna ask the state, they're
That's
gonna
the-
wanna,
that's
they're
the-
gonna wanna know this stuff, aren't
that's
they?
the whole idea behind this, is
So
to receive state funding.
Well, if we don't get state funding, and we may not, we very well may decide that this is important enough that we're gonna do internally.
Yep.
And I'm trying to set ourselves up for a future when we come either for a state grant or we come before a future city council that collectively we can go out there and say, hey, we did this and it works and here's why. Because someone's gonna ask that question. So
Yeah,
respectfully, I
there's
think we
no,
need to have it.
there's no downside to collecting more data, it's just costly.
Well, I think it'd be helpful to know what the cost is so we can help evaluate whether it's a worthwhile expenditure. And whether we can do some of that data collection in-house as opposed to going outside.
Yeah, and we can do some of that, and we have been talking closely with our colleagues in DPW about what capability we have in-house. The bike and pedestrian data, I believe, is more time consuming to collect. It's not a tube in the ground.
What about using, and I don't know this, but what about literally using traffic counts where you lay a cable or something and somebody bikes over it?
So they're not sensitive enough for bikes, but you can use video for bikes, which is, we've rented from a count company before and they just charge you an hourly rate for the video.
You know, again, I don't wanna micromanage this at all, I'm just trying to get to success here. And I do think it's really important to get our data correct.
Can I, oh, you got-
Maybe one more question,
Okay,
but
one
go
more
ahead.
question. No, go ahead.
You talked about the geotech survey at Washington Lowell and that was expensive. How expensive?
It's more of a time concern with getting the pilot advertised this year and mobilizing a bore. They basically drill a boring down. It's not I mean, I won't speak for the city. I don't think it's prohibitively expensive. Each boring is roughly about 10 grand. It varies. Obviously, we'd have to get a quote from an actual driller.
So can I interrupt you?
Go ahead,
The
please.
three of us from Ward 2 had a meeting this morning with Commissioner McGonigal and Director Heath about the light at that intersection. And I think Commissioner McGonigal, it sounds like you're going ahead and costing out that intersection change. Am I correct in that?
We're working on a parallel track here. This wasn't originally part of the scope of this project, but we're looking at it from our perspective. First to determine, do we need to replace that mast arm and get an understanding. So we're working with our transportation engineers and our consultant also on our end. We'll be coming back to you with more information as we receive it.
So the reason for that is because there is mitigation money from TRIO.
Right.
And the concept is, could that money be used for this? So how much would it cost if we did use that money? So Commissioner McGonigal is exploring that.
That's terrific, because I mean, that's a very common complaint. I wouldn't wanna see it held up in any way because of the pilot work. I'm done.
So we'll have an answer
Okay,
for
go
that.
ahead, I'll yield, plenty of people have questions, thank you all.
Okay, Councilor Leary, I think you're next.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just first of all want to say that I was really impressed with your presentation and the amount of data you had done and the work that went into this, the thoughtfulness. It was very impressive. And when I first saw this project last fall when it came out, I knew that it was going to be a great project. And I want to remind my colleagues that this is a pilot, so there's plenty of more opportunity for data collection and to make those kinds of changes or improvements that I'm sure many of my colleagues and the public would be concerned about. But we just sat here and earlier on and talked about raised crossings on Waverly Avenue and also another intersection on the south side. Because one of the biggest issues in this city is fast driving and unsafe intersections and not giving pedestrians and bicyclists a fair shake on our roads. And I know many of my people that I talk to are very concerned about that. So I want to just, this is improving the safety of the road for all users. And so I'm just in complete support of it, and I want to be fair that yes, the questions will come up, it might not be perfect. I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue to work on this. This is just 75% design as well that we're approving of tonight. Just regarding as someone who does bike to work every day, I have to negotiate Mass Ave in Boston on the bike lanes there, one on each side, and there's a lot of traffic. Like, I can't wait to get back on the Charles River Path. So you do have to be careful, but this would be a walk in the park compared to that. And yes, bicyclists still have to, and drivers still have to look where they're going and be careful and be safe. And there's no substitute for that. One couple of questions that I did have about, I love the vegetation, the trees, and to buffer the noise. And to provide also screening from the Mass Pike. I just remember not that long ago that MassDOT came and cut down all these trees, and I want to make sure that the state does not have any authority to touch the vegetation and that. I mean, I think it is the city of Newton land, right? But I wasn't 100% sure if the state has any authority over cutting down trees.
I think where we would be concerned and why we're trying to avoid those larger trees is I believe the previous cutting was related to some of the rail infrastructure and some of the maintenance around their utilities. So I think as long as we are trying to plant consciously to avoid encroachment, which is the plan Brian has put together, I don't think we're at a high risk for that happening to what we're going to be planting.
Okay, because they really cut down all the trees. It was quite dramatic, and it was an incredible difference in terms of the noise. You realize how great trees are for buffering noise and pollution when they're gone. So I'm glad to hear that. I didn't hear much about, say, the local businesses, especially closer to West Newton Square. Have they been, were they involved in this? Did they have any comment on it? Was there any concern about parking or anything like that they might have had?
So we did flyer all the business. So John Sisson, our Director of Economic Development, went door to door, tried to talk to anyone he could in all the businesses. We flyered all of them. We left behind stacks of flyers as well. I think the only business we really heard from Mr. Sisson, along with, I think, Councillor Kelly, met with the piano store and spoke with them, and it did not sound like they had any major concerns. They like having some visibility from the pike, so they were hoping that their signs would still be visible.
Okay.
But that was really about it, and we haven't heard from any other businesses that we've tried to reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm 100% in support of this project. Thank you.
I think Councilor Kelly, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, what a nice lead-in from Jen Cairo. I see so many more hands up of committee members and also non-committee members, so I'm going to try and be...
Councilor Kelly, can you speak any louder?
Sorry?
Can you get a little closer to your microphone?
I'm really close to it, but I'm going to volume it up because when...
We'll try and turn it up on our end.
Yeah, you're not loud for me, but Zoom people are loud. How is this any better if I volume up?
Better on our end. Go ahead.
Is that better, I'm saying?
Yeah, we're all set.
Okay. And then when the Zoom people speak, it's really loud. So because I see so many hands up, I said I'm going to try and be concise, both of committee members and other counselors that want to speak. I do have a couple of questions, and one of them, which is not going to be my first one, is about Jen Kyra's lead-in about the Steiner piano people and parking around Parsons. But the first comment I want to make, and I may have just misseen this, but early on in the presentation, there was an image of what the bike lane, the separated bike lane was going to look like. But as I heard and saw it, the person who presented it said, but this isn't what we're going to have. We're going to have it more separated. So my question is, assuming, let's hope I misheard and missaw that, is there an image of what it is going to look like actually for this project and how consistently along that shared two-way path, what amount of separation? Where are there going to be curbs? Where's there going to be parking? How do we get to see what that's really going to look like which I think is not the way the illustration that was first shown to us is. And
Take us
please
back to that
correct me.
picture.
It was very much towards the beginning. It was a photo with an inset of a similar kind of bikeway. But yeah, that one.
That's it.
Yeah, so yeah, the difference between this photo and what we're proposing is actually, we're proposing more separation than this photo provides because this photo doesn't have on-street parking, but our,
Go ahead. I'm just gonna say, why don't you show us what you actually are presenting rather than this? So we can see what it really will look like.
Can you zoom in?
Pretty much consistently, most of the whole length of it will be more like that with these bollard things.
yes, we're proposing them about every 20 feet spacing to discourage any vehicles from trying to drive in the path since it will be 10 feet wide. You know, we don't want anyone to think it's another travel lane. So we have the bollards there every 20 feet, or not bollards, but the modular curb bases with flex posts on them every 20 feet. They will be flexible on top, so if an emergency vehicle or anything needs to access it, they can plow right over those if need be.
What's the base thing called again that holds the flexible?
It's like a concrete modular base.
Modular base. Okay, so the entire length from Chestnut to Lowell will look more like this.
Correct. There are some areas where the buffer area with these modular bases is between a parking lane rather than next to the travel lane as is shown here, but it will still look the same. It's just, it'll be next to the parking lane.
Thanks. I just found it confusing to show the other picture of what it's not going to look like. So
yeah, sorry, I was just
did
trying to
see
show an
this.
example of the base.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I guess this leads me to what was really my third question, and then the other one is about this planter buffer thing, but while we're looking at this picture, Jen Kyra led in with that John Sisson and I did meet with the Steinert Piano people who do have serious concerns about whether they're going to lose parking near Parsons Street, which is there on the corner of that. And as you showed the plan of parking, that area had orange and red lines on it, which, does that mean there will be a reduction in parking?
Oh, sorry,
Right,
you're
there's
talking
no
about
legend on what the color lines meant. Usually I'm good at reading plans like that, but I couldn't tell what that meant.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's predicted capacity or utilization.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So there at the corner, exactly, Parsons Street and Washington. What does the red and the orange mean there at that corner on that block?
So we're expecting that the parking will be fully utilized in this block is what the colors are showing. So it's based on where people are parking today, how many of the spaces we're providing we think will be used during peak parking times.
But you
So
see
their
just to the,
question is the plan to reduce any parking on the block east and west, say between Eddy and Cross Street on either or both sides of Washington Street? Will there be any change in the capacity of parking spaces?
Let me double check with what's there today. We're showing 11 parking spaces there in the future. And the current parking has 15. So we're showing a 4 parking space reduction there.
but we are making it easier to park across the street now and utilize, because much of the parking on the south side is not used. But you see there'll be a crosswalk right there at Parsons, making that easier for people to park on that south side where there is quite a bit of parking.
Which will be the same amount of parking as they have now on the south side?
My guess is we lose a bit for the crossing there. So we are losing some parking, but generally it's where we're trying to improve safety conditions by pulling them back from the intersections. Or
They do park there and talk about how they fear for their lives, the staff trying to cross the street. So I think the crosswalk is a good idea, but losing 4 parking spaces for them, they do not have adequate on-site parking for the very few events that they have. So anyway, that is a block that I do know there are concerns with trying to support a local business there. And I know that one of our bigger goals is like not support cars, but people who come here are not generally walking or biking from their neighborhood. They're coming from out of town to a concert or a performance. So anyway, that's just something I would like you to think about or take another look at. If you can organize that block or two without losing 4 or 5 parking spaces, I think for that one business, and I know even for the one next door that has some office space and a law office in it, that would be advantageous. And I overall really agree with this plan about you know, safety and multiple use and slowing speeds and all that. And I'm not a big let's put in more parking, but I know in this particular block it is an issue. You don't need to answer it. I just want to point that out, that I think this is an area that should take a little more look. And my other question was on the pictures of the planter strip along the edge of the Mass Pike. Who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want to see those beautiful flowering trees? And it was pointed out that I think that Councilor Leary mentioned that sometimes the Pike, the T or DOT has done basically like clear cutting on their property on the banks. This plan looks to me like you're planning more like this, maybe, I don't know, you can tell me the right number, 4-foot wide strip of very dense, compacted, dry soil with a lot of salts. So I'll just say as a landscape architect that the idea about putting red buds and even magnolias in there, I like it, Brian, if you and Halverson might take another look at what trees you think would survive in this compacted urban salt spray, non-irrigated area. I think you're going to have a hard time getting red bud and even the Sweet Bay magnolias established there. I agree that we've been trying to get plants there. I've been working with residents in this area way before I was even a city councilor. And it's very hard along that strip, especially with the soil condition, with the Pike right there, with pollution and salt and no irrigation. These are really pretty pictures, but I think you would be hard pressed to find success with this planting plan there, though I agree it would be lovely. So I would just take another look at what might survive in that kind of strip, because I don't think you can commit to maintaining the soil condition or any irrigation in that. So those are my only, it's very windy there also. I'm not sure that the Sweet Bay magnolia and the red bud are going to be happy in that kind of windy, windswept, salty, dry condition. So that's all my comments was about the kind of planting that you're envisioning, about the parking around the blocks of Parsons Street. And I'm happy to see more like what the consistent look of that shared pedestrian way will be like. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Getz.
I'm actually, Councilor Kelly pretty much hit the trees, you know, just even in terms of, because so you are going to be actually planting specimens. You're not even, these aren't going to be the trees in tubs. These are going into the ground.
Right.
These are going to be permanent, you know, in the sense of, so will there be irrigation or will there be all the needs fulfilled for the trees?
Initially, contractually, the contractor will maintain trees for a certain period of time, typically the first growing season, and then they have a year guarantee, so they may want to take care of these things. After that, the city's agreed to water them, particularly during establishment period. That's the first couple of years you want the roots to establish and give these trees a shot. So I think there will be a focus both by the contractor and the city to make sure they have the best shot at living.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's good to hear because it sounds like it's been in consultation with Councilor Kelly because I think she's really on it in terms of the specimens. But I'm actually interested in rollout. You know, I'm sort of curious, how is this going to proceed? And I'm also really concerned about that intersection with Washington and Chestnut because it's a free-for-all in that zone. When you turn and you're turning right and then you get into a series of, you know, it's pretty much, I don't even know if there's any actual curb. I mean, it's all, you know, just driveways. So there needs to be, as Councilor Laredo is suggesting, President Laredo, a method, because that's a conflict area. And it's gonna be really difficult for a vehicle that's trying to negotiate, turning left, or right is easier, but left is really problematic. And a vehicle will be blocking, it's gonna be wide open, because you can't have the bellers there for the safety of the bicyclists because of all of the vehicle crossing. So I don't know, at least for 2 blocks, it's gonna be this slush kind of like undefined, because it's just so problematic in that zone. And I can let my other, the counselors of the ward to speak to it, because it's a really problematic zone. You drop down from Chestnut, and then it's the Dunkin' Donut is right on the corner, and it becomes, these, the coffee zones are not good, in terms of people are nutty when they're going for their coffee and their sugar. So, and that corner is really, really problematic. So you've got everybody wanting to enter into the bike zone, and then you've got all the conflicting cars. Those first 2 blocks are going to be hugely problematic. And then just even in terms of the installation of this whole thing, are you going to go this way, or are you going to go this way, down the road, or are you going to go from the ground up? What is the sort of thinking about just the rollout of the whole plan?
So usually that would be determined by the contractor. So we don't have that level of detail of how they would stage their construction yet.
I think we would work really closely with the Department of Public Works on that. They'd be at the table with us determining what the best method is.
I just didn't know if it progressed down the street and it happened incrementally down the street,
We'll tell them which way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's
All
pretty
set?
much it. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Kalis.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So a couple things. I really think that Councilor Laredo and Getz on the intersections and how cars are going to be creeping out is a very valid point, and I'm concerned about that. It leads me to a question of, which is I don't know, difficult to answer, but how open are you to major change once you see how the road is being used and where we have pinch points? And are we establishing service levels that if we reach them, we're obligated to change?
Sorry, what do you mean by a service level that would trigger a change?
By service levels, I mean pinch points where we're having problems.
Yeah, I mean,
How can it can't just all be, we've got to have some type of thresholds that we agree to that say, if we reach this threshold of maybe it's 5 cars waiting or whatever it might be, because people can't turn, then a change has to be made. And I'm just wondering if we've thought through this or not.
Counselor Kalis, are you aware that people can't turn there now anyway? At intersection of getting onto Washington Street from Chestnut is.
Well, that would be a
very
good
difficult.
that'd be a good comparison to know what that level is now, where we go to later on, and if that's comparable, then fine. Then there's no obligatory change. But I'm just saying we have to know these numbers or set up thresholds.
Are you requesting at every driveway we would be monitoring how many people?
No,
are waiting
I'd leave it up to you. I would say that it's a thought that I've been having as you went through this, and I just want us all to be open to the fact that, this isn't going to probably succeed on its first take. It might take the first one and then an update here and an update there. And I think it's important that we kind of assess ahead of time, well, what is going to be that instigator that's going to make us change?
So we've had discussions, Councilor Kalis, on this topic with DPW and Ned Cott about this and his team. So they've been part of this the whole way. They deal with these kinds of issues on a day-to-day basis. So They're gonna be watching this very closely. I'm guessing that we'll hear pretty quickly from folks as well if there's an issue. The beauty of this project is that things can be tweaked as necessary and experimented with as the project goes along.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, it sounds like you're flexible and that's good. And it, you know, what I'm kind of thinking about in my head, it might not be feasible, but, and as things come up, as long as we're willing to make changes, I think that's important. Now, part of this is what's related is, I was looking at the comparison roads that slide, and each of those comparison roads, they don't have as many turnouts, at least I don't think they do, as Washington Street does. You look at Nonantum, if you can go back to that slide, all of those roads.
I mean, Tremont certainly has more.
Tremont does, but that doesn't have any data yet.
Right.
But if you're talking about Nonantum Road, you're talking about Route 135. I don't know the one in Hingham, but it doesn't look. These just don't have the turnouts that this is going to have, and this is far more complex than any of these. And so I just think, you know, the Tremont one could be a good one to compare to, but it has no data yet. We don't know. You know, it did say daily volume of 14,000, but that to me is very, very concerning in that we don't have anything. So it's just a red flag in my opinion. Do you agree with that or not? Because maybe you know those roads better than I do, and they have similar numbers of turnouts or intersections.
It's your concern about making left turns from those side roads? Or
Well,
traffic
left or
backups
right.
on the road from vehicles turning in and out?
Because this should actually improve that. One of the things we have heard consistently is safety issues with turning left onto Washington Street today from those side roads. Because right now you have 4 travel lanes, cars going very fast, whereas this is going to slow cars down. You're just having to cross 1 travel lane to take a left onto Washington Street. We've also heard about the lack of visibility at those intersections because cars are parking right up to those corners and you can't see. So part of this is also pulling those parking spaces back, which is why we lose some parking spaces in some of these blocks, but removing some of that parking right at the intersection so you have much greater visibility. So these are all things that will actually make it easier and safer for people turning onto and off of Washington Street.
And I hear you, and I want to believe that. I just don't see any comparables that are similar to Washington Street, and that's what's concerning to me. So, I mean, I don't have any real question. It's just it's a huge red flag to me.
Okay, so we have registered your concern and we'll go on. Is that okay? We'll go on to the next person?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Lucas, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Thank you. Director Heath, prior to the full council voting in favor of the initial concept for the Washington Street pilot, in your email to the council from February 9th, you wrote, and I quote, "We are reserving the 2.7 million in the overall ARPA budget and that we don't have a full estimate from the consultants. We expect to receive that estimate with their 25% design submission in April, and we will share the estimate with the City Council at the 25% design approval public facilities meeting." Director Heath, what is the budget?
So I'm going to let the consultants speak to that since they developed the estimate for the project at this stage, which, you know, you always have to put a caveat on it because it's a very early stage of the project.
Yeah, at this stage, our construction cost is estimated at 1.5 million right now.
1.5 million.
Yes.
And we are allocating 2.7 million from ARPA. So you have a wiggle room of 1.2 million, about half to go over.
I don't think.
No, we're at a $2 million, so if I put that in an email on February 9th, that was incorrect, because we're working with a 2 million, I don't know if, Jonathan Yo is on the call as well, he's been keeping a close eye on this project and the ARPA funds as well. But we've been working with a $2 million overall budget.
Okay, because that's a change, because again, if it was a typo in your email, that's fine, but I've been under the impression that it's 2.7. Now you're saying it's 2.0. I believe we had a docket item in finance talking about the ARPA funds, and it was 2.7 on that, I believe.
I can get some clarification for you.
All right, thank you.
But, and if I can just jump in very
ask-
quickly, it's a good question, Counselor. The budget is still the 2.7 million. Obviously, if this project can be done for 1.5 or $2 million, that is great. We have lots of other things that ARPA funds can be quickly used for, including other road work. So at this point, the ARPA budget still has the 2.7. We certainly hope it can be done for less.
Okay.
I just want to
Thank
add,
you.
I just want to add a clarification to that. So 2.7 million is allocated from ARPA. What have we spent to date on this project?
I can answer that. So the design portion, which is the only portion we've been talking about, was 500,000, and that was from revenues from marijuana, correct, on Washington Street.
Is the project 3.2 million or 2.7 million, Mr. Yo?
Well, the ARPA's on.
2.7 is what we said, yeah.
Right, but then there's another $500,000 from cannabis funds?
That's for the design.
Yeah, that's paying for this design. The ARPA project isn't including the design for this.
All right, so you have $500,000 in cannabis funds that are being used for design. How much of that has been expended to date?
You have to give us a minute to.
Sure, I mean, I don't expect you to have it at the tip of your tongue, just trying to get an idea where we are with that. And while you're doing that, the $1.5 million estimate you gave for the construction, does that include all the monitoring and the other things that you're gonna have to do, or is that just the physical construction?
It's just the physical construction.
So what's the monitoring estimated to cost?
We have not estimated that out.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if it's a $2.7 million budget, we need to have some idea of what the total project's gonna cost, not just 1.5 million for construction. So you don't have to come back with it now, but we certainly need to have that information.
We're at about 300,000 so far for design.
Sounds about right.
And you think we're gonna finish, full design within 500,000?
Yes, including some level of evaluation. I think what we're hearing tonight is there may be more information that the council would like, and I think our goal would be to identify what's appropriate for that, and then that might be additive to the design to cover that evaluation.
I just
If
want-
you had suggested doing counts 4 times a year.
Sure.
There's a cost associated with that.
Absolutely, what I wanna be sure of is, I think this is where Councilor Lucas is going, is that you don't come back to us in 6 months or a year and say, we need another $500,000 for this project.
Yeah.
And
I think we completely agree with that. If we need to include monitoring as funds as part of the ARPA dollars, we will certainly do that.
Okay, but before you go on, Councilor Lucas, can I just ask, does the 1.5 include the purchase of the plant materials? It does.
Current plant list, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, Councilor Lucas, you can go on.
Thank you. I assume in all of this, can the council receive a full itemized spending on how much it costs for the planters, how much it costs for the flex posts and all that stuff?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Yes, we can provide,
Oh,
we can
okay.
provide that estimate. We have that, yep.
All right, thank you.
All set?
Let's see, oh, sorry, I'm not done, sorry. Let's see, the RFQ on the city's purchasing, webpage says that the Washington Street pilot will go all the way down to Church Street. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I heard Ms. Kyra, reference that in the presentation from earlier this evening. Just want to verify, are we going all the way down to Church Street with the pilot, going all the way through Newtonville and parts of Nonantum without
No.
doing any studying?
No, and we did not mention Church Street in the presentation. We're going from Chestnut to Lowell.
So, okay, I could have sworn I heard Church Street, but,
No.
So, Councilor
You know,
Lucas, that's been talked about before as part of a larger project for the Transportation Improvement Program, but the focus has really been on this stretch between Chestnut and Lowell.
okay, but the RFQ says Church Street.
I think at one point we had talked about that, and I think if we're talking about a TIP project, we may begin to look at that as part of a larger project.
But not part of the pilot.
Not part of the pilot, no.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about any major road reconfiguration on Washington Street within the next few years through Newtonville, Nonantum, down to Church Street?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's see. I like the landscaping, that I saw in the renderings. And I think that's already been touched upon, so I don't have any comments on that. Director Heath, I did send you an email, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, with respect to improved lighting on the roadway, especially near crosswalks, and I didn't see that in the presentation today. So I just want to verify, are we going to see improved lighting?
That's not presently part of the scope here.
So
I'm not aware that there's a problem, but if there is, love to hear about it. Again, I would defer to my colleagues at DPW as to whether there's adequate lighting along that roadway. I do think that a number of the improvements that are proposed here in the crosswalk will increase the visibility for pedestrian and bicyclists, and the reduction in speeds will help with vehicles as well.
I agree entirely. I'm just concerned about folks crossing late at night where there may not be many cars and they're crossing the street to get to Trader Joe's or any other business over there.
I can't imagine
And
it.
a car,
I can't imagine
and
it
a
worse
car
than.
could be going 30, 35 miles an hour and it be very dark, the same lighting as it is now, and someone could be struck by an automobile. And I'm just thinking, could lighting improve it?
We can look at that.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what the rules are for Washington Street right now because I've never attempted one, but are U-turns allowed? And will U-turns be allowed with the pilot?
I can speak to that. It is not legal to do a U-turn across a double yellow. And there is a double yellow in the both the current conditions and the proposed conditions.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, and then so if we're gonna have fewer lanes, which will, the goal is to reduce speeds, and I believe it will. Will we be able to determine the noise from the cars? Because that was one of my concerns at the public meeting back in April, is that I wanted to identify the noise levels from Washington Street, heat islands, and air quality. I understand it'll be difficult to do heat islands because you're not removing any pavement or not covering up any pavement with grass. And we're not planting, I don't think we're planting large trees along Washington Street like the ones that were removed a few years ago that Councilor Leary was referring to. So is there maybe any way to measure noise?
I mean, we could, I don't know, we probably could. I don't know what the change would be, I mean, I guess some of the screening along the Pike will help with some of that noise. I mean, we don't expect it to get worse. You know, as Jessica presented on one of the slides, most of these concerns around air quality, heat island, and noise really need more permanent improvement, and this is sort of that first step in making things a little bit better and showing that a reduced roadway can work in order to then have more space to do the more, more effective, more permanent improvements down the road.
And I would add, Counselor,
Go
that
ahead.
generally noise, sorry, hold on, I spilled my water over the floor. Generally noise increases with an increase in vehicle speed and with an increase in vehicle volume. And we're not trying to increase either of those with this project, nor are we encouraging an increase of either of those. So we're really not anticipating this project to be increasing noise along Washington, if that's, the main source of the concern.
No, I'm concerned is, are we going to accurately document and calculate the noise, what it is now, which is 4 lanes of roadway, cars going in that 35, 40 miles an hour. Now we're going down to 2 to 3 lanes, and the goal is to get cars to going 30 miles an hour. Are we going to calculate a difference in the noise volume that those cars generate?
The turnpike dominates, the turnpike noise dominates that whole stretch of roadway. I can't imagine that doing this is gonna change that at all. I agree. I don't think that's an issue that I would recommend studying. I'm sorry, Councilor Lucas, but the turnpike is just so loud as it is.
I understand. Washington Street does get, I think they had it on the slide earlier, around, was it 11,000 cars a day?
Yeah, it's
You
about
don't think that's gonna make a difference?
I think we expect a similar volume.
I understand, but the cars are gonna be going slower.
Right.
You don't think that will make a difference? No?
I guess I can't say either way. If cars going slower will reduce the noise when you factor in the Pike noise, or if the Pike will just overrule the impact of our changes on Washington.
Okay, all right. Those were my questions and comments, and I would like a clearer answer with respect to the funding and the cost estimates for the pilot. And I will leave it at that. Thank you for your time. Chair, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Block?
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in vehicle queues. I don't think I saw in the presentation vehicle queues at peak times in the morning and the afternoon. Do you have a vehicle queue analysis?
Yes.
And can you show it, or that wasn't part of the presentation?
I don't have that prepared for tonight, I apologize, but we do have the data.
And we have,
Okay,
we have,
go ahead.
we have all of the raw data online on the website.
Well, that would be the count.
Right, that's the turning.
Yeah, but not necessarily the backup set, yeah.
Well, we need to be able to see at peak times, morning and evening, how far back the queues go. But I'm particularly concerned about Chestnut Street and Lowell, the endpoints, and the difficulty of cars turning onto Washington, turning off of Washington. If they can't do it now, I don't think that relieves us of calculating if this gets worse, or what we're going to do to resolve the fact that cars may take a very long time to be able to make these turns. And that's, so I get all the advantages, the safety issues but we've got to get a handle on the queues, how long they are, and how much time it takes to get through these intersections.
And that is one of our proposed metrics, is studying the queues. We have the existing data and we will be monitoring it post-implementation.
We did analyze anticipated impacts. We did traffic analysis of potential future conditions, which we did include within our submission to the city. It's documented in a memo. I don't know, who has seen that to date, but that information has been analyzed, so.
Okay, so it would be really helpful if I could see the current queue analysis and those things, and if you've got them, that's great. Just, create the slides and send them around. I want to pick up on what Councilor Kalis was asking about earlier. If we have queue analysis and we think, let's say, it's not going to be any worse, and then we get into this pilot and it is worse, are we going to dismantle the pilot? Are we just, what are the fallback positions short of that, so that if the queues exceed a certain benchmark, we'll do X, and if they exceed it further, we'll do Y? I mean, we need to grapple with this. I appreciate the flexibility, and that's fine, but at least for these major implications, we need to see what the plan B is and what the plan C is. Those are my questions for now. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councilor Block. And next is Councilor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting discussion and many points that my colleagues make that I agree with, including that can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Sorry. That we have tried planting things in that little strip, and I do worry about the survival of anything that goes back in there. Although it would be, I totally agree, lovely to have some screening there. I want to stress, as Councilor Leary did, that this is a pilot that we are testing before investing. This is the low budget way to find out what works without spending a Tremont Street level of money, and to find out what happens when it does happen. I worry that we're loading this up like the proverbial Christmas tree with other goodies that would also be really nice to have, but we need, our main reason this became the focus was because it's our most dangerous road. And this was the lowest volume section of that road, so it was ripe for doing some experimentation on. And, oh, by the way, no sidewalk at all on parts of the south side of the road. So also ripe for improvement on a major road like this, to not have a safe way to get from the bus stop or the parked car to the crosswalk is just insane. So I worry about mission creep here. That said, the lessons we learn here can be applied and across the city as we learn what works and what doesn't work. When we went through the Washington Street Vision process, I want to remind my colleagues that a number of the then merchants on the north side in this section were very excited about having access to the parking on the south side and it being safe. And one of the reasons they supported the Washington Street vision was because they lost very little parking. They actually gained more accessible parking on the south side. And they supported the bike additions, but only if it meant they didn't also lose the parking. As far as getting out of the driveways around Duncan's, nobody makes a left out of there now. Nobody in their right mind makes a left out of there now because it's totally a free-for-all. Can we tweak it, make it a little bit safer? Of course we can, but I think it's too crazy and unsafe to do over 4 lanes of traffic, and I don't think that that's going to become a really common move. Also because at the time you're getting your coffee, you also have a queue. The queues, by the way, are dictated by the intersections, not by the long stretch that we're experimenting with. We are not changing the intersections. They have the same, they're going to have the same bottleneck effect. And so I don't think the queues are likely to get any worse. They just will be in 1 lane rather than in 2. And they should be exactly the same as what we have in the current plan, as what we have now. And once this goes in, but I'm happy to test it and see if it changes. I don't think we should be making decisions based on rush hour traffic queues that are in a street that's already pretty much failing on that. We should see if we can make this safer. I think the current metrics that the consultant showed were excellent ones to work with. What happens when you accommodate more cars, and we've seen this on the Katy Highway, and we've seen this on 128 south of here, and we've seen this on Kendrick Street, and we've seen this in many other cities across the world, across the country, across the world. When you accommodate more cars in a busy city, you get more cars. And I don't think we want more cut-through traffic in the city of Newton. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping you voted out favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, you're next. Councillor Wright, are you there? Okay, Councillor Wright, we're going to go to Councillor Gentile, and we'll see if we can get you at the next person. Councillor Gentile?
Actually, I'm ready now. I'm
Oh,
sorry, my phone
okay.
had some issues.
Okay.
So I'm excited about this. I use this probably more than anybody else. I'm a block from there. I used to go through Westminster Square, which I avoid. Coming to City Hall, I use this all the time. Reducing from 2 lanes in each direction to 1, it'll make it a lot easier to turn. And those streets along there's quite a few of them. There's cars, 2, 3 of us, you know, going down the road, all trying to make those turns. So I'm really rooting for this to work, and I really hope we do, but I think it's good to have metrics and to be able to tweak it. One suggestion for Councillor Kelly, if you can bring up that slide with the parking by the piano shop there in Parsons. One thought is that the one? No, there was another one that showed like the bus stop and stuff. So one idea is to move the bus stop to the other side, because you're clearing, when you look at Parson right there on the right, you got that cleared area, which you do need in order to pull out. But move the bus stop to that spot, because the bus comes only once an hour or every 2 hours or whatever. So you will have limited visibility much less often, and then you would add parking down at the end of the street there.
Moving it over here.
No, move it to the other side.
Closer to Parsons,
Over
where we
here.
have
Over here.
that blocked off.
Yeah. Because right now you want that for visibility. You don't want to put parking there, but the buses don't come that often. It might not even stop there. So it would free up a few more parking spots down at the end of that street near Eddie. That would add a few more spots.
Yeah, it's something we can evaluate. It would move a bit further from the crossing location that people might need to get to and from it, but we can look into that.
Well, so that other crossing is just for bikes, so there's not a crosswalk over by Parsons?
Correct. We don't currently have a crosswalk proposed over here. So we would just be looking at what's the distance from here to this
Okay.
crossing, and then is there enough length for the bus stop
So-
to meet MBTA?
So we might,
requirements?
so it sounds like because they do, they have performances and things like that, we may want to think about putting a crosswalk over where that bike crossing is. So that people who park on the south side of Washington Street have a safe way to get to the piano store.
We can look at that. That will likely reduce parking in that area as well to add an additional crosswalk.
And if you do look at the other slide, it's green, going from Parsons east on the north and the south side. We are predicting not much utilization or demand for those spaces. So I do think there may not be, the parking directly in front, in that block between Parsons and Cross may be, in high demand, but there certainly will be a good bit of parking nearby for those events when they happen.
Yeah, but you want to get them safely across the road too.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council Wright and Council Gentile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For some reason tonight, it's been difficult, if you're online, it's been difficult to hear and to see. I don't know why, I haven't had this problem before, but I've had a real hard time hearing some of the comments that are made, and I assume I'm not the only one. So if I repeat something, I've been here the whole night, I may have just missed it. Secondly, I keep hearing, this piano store must be the busiest piano store in all of North America, because I keep hearing about parking on the south side and walking over to the piano store. So I'm happy for them, they're doing such a robust business. But that got me to thinking, the fact of the matter is, we've done nothing but lose businesses on this stretch of Washington Street since the Washington Street vision plan was discussed and adopted. Quite a few, if you really think about it. And then the other comment I want to make is we all have different opinions about congestion and safety and so forth. I just want to make it clear, I don't agree with some of the comments that were made earlier. There are many other areas of the city that I go through that I think have a much greater congestion problem and safety problem than Washington Street, especially this stretch. However, I've been following in this closely from the very beginning. I believe in the trial. I'm taking a leap of faith with the trial because I think that it's the only way that we're going to be able to find out what works and what doesn't work, as others have said. So, I am on board, but I just had a couple of questions. Early on, there was a discussion about, dedicated left-hand turns. And there's a few streets, I think maybe Parsons and Cross were mentioned where there is not a dedicated left-hand turn. Is that correct?
Parsons and Harrington Street do not have
and
dedicated left
Harrington.
turns, yes.
Are those the only two?
The only other one, so we don't have technically one at Brooks Avenue because of its proximity to the Lowell Avenue signal. And then we were not able to incorporate one at Dunstan Street while the work zone is in place for the Newton Crossing development. I think
Okay.
after the work zone were lifted, there would likely be room there if one was desired. But we weren't able to fit one because we want to shift the travel lane away from their barriers so that we're not aiming people into their work zone barriers.
All right. Well, let's just take Parsons for an example. Is there room, like in other stretches, to put in a dedicated left turn lane?
Likely, yes, if we removed parking on the south side in that stretch of roadway.
Okay, and because my concern is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody wants to, the way it's designed now, if somebody wants to take a left, there really is only one lane. So if they're sitting there trying to take a left, aren't they gonna create a queue in back of them until they're able to take that left?
Yeah, I think they would create a temporary queue of traffic waiting behind them until they found their gap.
Well, I think we're gonna find out, if we leave it like this, I think you're gonna find out pretty quickly that we need to do something to help those people take a left-hand turn. So I would ask you to take another look at that so that we don't have to, go through a lot of aggravation to find out that we should have put in a dedicated left turn lane there. Because, there are times, I just was saying that it isn't as busy as other places, but there are times when there'll be a steady stream coming down Washington Street, heading west. And I could see, I understand what was said earlier about the queues being at both ends, but we're gonna create queues in the middle if we don't have left turn lanes at all of those intersections. And I would ask you to, to please, take a look at that.
Yeah, I think it's just a
And
matter
then
of,
the only other thing really I wanted to say is I'm willing to take the leap of faith because, as I said, we're not gonna find out what works and what doesn't work unless we get started. But how are we going to decide if and when to make changes? Is there gonna be some kind of a formal process? Because one thing I don't wanna have happen is all of a sudden somebody in a particular department thinks that, that we should remove a left turn lane for turn. And it gets done and we on the council have no knowledge of it, and all of a sudden we start getting calls, from our constituents, and we don't know what happened. So if something is, once this goes into effect, if there is going to be a change made, will it be a docket item so that everybody knows? And that would mean that, councils could docket an item. And of course, a department could docket an item to say that we want to make change X, Y, Z. Is that the way it's going to work, or what is the plan for changes?
President Lorado, do you have a suggestion?
Councilor Gentile, I think your concern is a very good one. I'm not sure we have a mechanism, nor should we ask the planning department to come back with every single change in a pilot. But maybe the way to do it is to schedule regular meetings on an ongoing basis every 6 months or so that we know what's going on, we can hear the evaluation, and respectfully would ask that before a change is implemented, if you're gonna come that frequently, you let us know so we can have that advance notice, but you don't have to have formal approval from us to do it. Would that be acceptable, Councilor Gentile? And I'd be very happy to co-document.
I'm not so much concerned about formal approval, but I do think it's important that everybody knows that a change is going to be made and why it's being made. So even if it was an understanding that before any change is made, it will be discussed in public facilities, for informational purposes, however you want to put it, so that we don't get into, though I personally don't see the harm with needing to vote changes, but if people want to be less formal about it, I'm mostly concerned about knowing that a change is being made and the reasons for it, so I know what's going on, just like I'm sure others would.
Yeah, so if you could let us know as not just every 6 months, but as things are changing, just let us know. And also, I'm thinking quarterly instead of every 6 months.
And Commissioner McGonigal has his.
Yes, Commissioner McGonigal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as far as adding or removing lanes, the ordinance 2651 requires us to come and get city council approval. So any of the changes like that, we have to come to you, even in this pilot situation. If we're changing that, we'll be coming before you for a vote on that.
That helps, but there are a lot of other types of changes, you know, removing parking spaces or adding parking spaces. I think it would be wise if there was an understanding that that information would be shared with a committee, and public facilities makes sense before the actual change is made. So hopefully we can work that out.
And Carver and Director Heath are agreeing with you.
Yep.
Okay, and, you know, again, because, I'll leave it at that. And the only other point I wanted to make is this is coming to finance. I heard some good questions earlier from some of my colleagues about trying to get a clear understanding of the, budget and the total numbers. I think there is a little bit of confusion between the design funds and construction funds and how much is left in reserve. Before we take this up in finance, please
Council Gentile, this
make
is not
sure-
going to finance.
Pardon?
This is not going to finance. This is just approval of the 75% design. It's not docketed for finance.
I thought it was docketed to public facilities and finance.
No, it was not a joint referral.
No, there was no funds being added
There's
to
no
this
money.
time.
Does somebody have the agenda there? Cause I thought I saw it
Yes,
on the
we have the
agenda that
agenda.
way.
It's not, it's ARPA money. It doesn't go to finance.
The one above, he's looking at the one above.
Ah, okay, there's a docket item right
The
above it that's
stormwater.
went to joint referral, but not this one.
What was the item above it?
The stormwater.
Oh, okay, so this is not coming to finance?
No.
All right, well then I would ask that, before we take a vote on this at the full council, that there be a very, you know, easy to understand breakdown of where we are with, you know, what money's been spent, the sources and all of that, just so it's clear to us, because I don't, it's not intentional or anything, but I just think it's not as clear as it should be, that's all.
So you have agreement from.
We can do that.
Yeah,
And
that's.
we are full council on Monday
Yeah.
night.
Yep.
Is that doable?
Yes.
So Council Kalis, did you have anything? You had your hand up before.
I did, and it was, Councilor Gentile just covered it, so I'm fine.
Okay. So I'll just
Am I
add,
done?
you're all done? You're done?
All right, I'm done, thank you.
Okay, I'll just add my comments that I'm thrilled that we're actually getting to do this pilot, because Washington Street feels like the stepchild of all the main streets in Newton. And it really does need to become more beautiful, to more safe, and a better place for everybody who lives there. You know, I'm not as concerned about the turning, because you're gonna be turning against one lane of traffic instead of 2 lanes of traffic, and it was those 2 lanes that really mess you up when you're trying to make a turn. So I'm happy about bringing it down to 1 lane. I don't know, all my notes are so babbled, I can't tell what I've got here that I wanted to say, but I'm very happy that this is finally happening. And I can't wait for it beginning to happen. I'm concerned about the plants, but I'm concerned about who's gonna water the plants. Will the city really do what we need to do?
We've coordinated very closely with Parks and Rec through this for that reason, and Brian's made quite a few changes to the landscape proposal based on their feedback and what's actually feasible.
I just think this is gonna make this part of town so much better.
Oh, and we have Louise
Yeah.
here as well.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to confirm that we have been working with the planning department and DPW on this project to really flush out the best possible plans and their survival. And I think we'll continue to do that until implementation. So
Great.
just wanted to throw that
Thank
in
you for
there.
that. So I think unless there's any further discussion, and I don't see any hands, do we have?
My hand is up.
Oh, please, Council Gentile.
Just one, I forgot to ask this. This is approval of the 75% design. The last 25%, refresh my memory what that is, and is that something that comes back to the council generally, or what is the plan there? To get to 100%?
Again, I'll defer to my colleagues, but in DPW, but our intention was to move ahead with full design and get this project ready to go for end of summer, beginning of fall. We have to get this project bid and have a contract by the end of the year. So we can't make any mistakes between now and then in terms of timing. So I think at a 70, and I'll defer to Jessica in terms of 75% design. That's pretty much it in terms of the design that you're seeing tonight. Whatever tweaks that are made are going to be minor tweaks. Happy to share those with the council from what you've seen tonight. But I wouldn't want to jeopardize the timing of this at this stage.
Are you all set, Council Gentile?
So the answer is that 100% design is not coming back to us. I honestly can't, I don't know with certainty if it usually does on these kinds of projects, or
We don't think
what
it
happens,
usually-
but
we don't think-
regardless,
I think 75%.
I'm never motivated, Director Heath, by the fact that, timing is why we should move quicker than we might normally want to. That's not a good excuse, because that's how we make mistakes. However, if it's typical that we move things along at 75%, I'm fine with that, as long as you do what you just said, which is making us aware that the 100% design is completed. If folks want to get, information, more specific information about the 100% design, there's an opportunity to do so, to reach out to the department. But at the very least, just a quick one-pager with any and all changes from the 75% design, I think would probably work just as well. Can we do that?
We can do that.
All right, that works for me anyway.
Good. All right, thank you. So does anyone want to make the motion? It's your job, I think, Councilor Mayor.
I think it's not my ward. Where's Andrea?
It's my ward, so I can't do it. I mean, it's
Susan.
actually, oh,
Because it's.
Can I just make a comment before we vote?
please, go ahead, Councilor Kalis.
So I just wanted to say, I'm looking, and I'm looking at the planning, the representatives of the planning department and the consultants, and I know this is not an easy meeting. Look, we're excited about this, and although we have a lot of questions and we pick and we knit at everything, it's great work and great thinking. So thank you for everything you put in.
And Councilor Kalis, I wanted to say thank you to all the councilors who, not just the staff and the consultants, but to all the councilors who've really studied this carefully and come in with good comments and questions tonight. I appreciate that. Councilor Kelly, it is your ward and my ward. Would you like to make the motion?
That's why I raised my hand. I would be happy to make a motion to approve the 75% design.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
That's just based on, also, we need to have the financials
Yes.
prior to the city council.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, we can vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions? I guess that's unanimous.
Good job.
All right, good job, everybody.
Thank you all very much. I know this is a lot, but this will be a good project.
Yeah,
It's gonna be really well.
yeah, it's really exciting.
Such a move forward for the north side of the city,
It's a
really.
good project.
Yeah. We just made a couple small tweaks.